Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into a dramatic and rapidly unfolding situation inside Belarus, where reports of a military revolt are shaking the foundations of power. The country, long ruled by Alexander Lukashenko with an iron grip, is now facing one of the most serious internal challenges of his rule. As tensions rise, the political landscape is shifting in ways that few expected, and the world is watching closely to understand how power is slipping away. In this video, we break down the developments, the reasons behind the revolt, the potential outcomes, and how this crisis could reshape the future of Belarus and the wider region. In recent days, the atmosphere in Belarus has become increasingly intense, as divisions within the military have moved from whispers to visible cracks. Officers and units once loyal to Lukashenko are now reportedly refusing orders, questioning decisions, and pushing back against the centralized control that has defined the country's governance for decades. This revolt, although not yet a full-scale nationwide uprising, represents a turning point because it originates from the very institution that has kept Lukashenko in power. The military's dissatisfaction is not an overnight phenomenon. It has been building slowly due to political pressure, strained alliances, questionable decision-making, and growing concern over Belarus' involvement in regional conflicts. The roots of this revolt can be traced back to a mixture of political, economic, and strategic factors. Many officers feel that Belarus has become increasingly isolated, with heavy dependency on Russia limiting the nation's autonomy. The pressure to support Russian military operations near the Ukrainian border created internal divisions, especially among those who believed Belarus should avoid deeper involvement in foreign conflicts. Alongside this, economic stagnation, declining public support, and the government's harsh policies against dissent have created frustration even within the ranks that used to support the regime. When parts of the military start to doubt leadership, the stability of the entire power structure becomes fragile. Another significant factor is the widening gap between frontline officers and top-level commanders. For years, Lukashenko relied on loyal generals who maintained strict control over the armed forces. However, many mid-level officers argue that these generals have become disconnected from the realities facing soldiers. Reports suggest that disputes over readiness, resource allocation, and unnecessary deployments have created resentment. In some regions, units have refused to participate in certain operations, signaling that discipline and obedience can no longer be taken for granted. This shift is dangerous for any authoritarian leadership, especially one that relies on the military for survival. The response from Lukashenko's inner circle has been a mixture of denial and aggressive countermeasures. While public statements insist that everything is under control, sources indicate that emergency meetings, rapid reshuffling of command positions, and attempts to isolate dissenting officers are happening behind the scenes. The government appears to be trying to contain the revolt before it spreads further, but these rushed tactics may be creating additional suspicion rather than restoring confidence. When the leadership begins to panic, it often signals that the situation is more serious than they admit. At the same time, the Belarusian public is beginning to react to the news of instability. For many citizens, memories of the 2020 protests are still fresh. Back then, the military and security forces were the main reason Lukashenko remained in power despite mass demonstrations. But now, if parts of that same machinery are pulling away, ordinary people may feel empowered to speak again. For years, fear kept dissent quiet, but cracks in the security structure can dramatically shift the national mood. The idea that even the military no longer sees the leadership as infallible is enough to spark hope in some and fear in others. International reactions are also shaping the situation. Western countries, long critical of Lukashenko, are observing the events closely. Some analysts argue that external pressure may increase if the revolt grows, potentially through sanctions or diplomatic measures aimed at exploiting the weakened regime. Meanwhile, Russia, Belarus' strongest ally, is likely alarmed by the idea of instability so close to its borders. The Kremlin relies on Belarus as a buffer and strategic partner, so any sign of rebellion is a threat to regional balance. If Moscow perceives that Lukashenko is losing control, it may attempt to intervene more directly, either to stabilize the situation or to ensure that a pro-Russian leadership remains in power. Inside Belarus, the situation is becoming more unpredictable by the hour. Some officers are calling for political reform, arguing that the country needs new leadership and a shift in direction. Others are focused solely on restoring confidence in the military structure without necessarily pushing for a new political system. This lack of unity among the dissenting ranks makes it difficult to predict what kind of outcome the revolt might lead to. What is clear, however, is that the old system is no longer functioning smoothly. Many civilians are watching with cautious optimism. For years, they have lived under strict control, limited freedoms, and uncertainty about the future. The potential weakening of the regime opens the door for long-awaited change, although it also brings risks. Revolutions, especially when initiated by the military, rarely follow a predictable path. There is always the possibility of internal conflict, power struggles, or even civil unrest. Still, the very fact that such a revolt is happening at all marks a significant moment in Belarusian history.